Hey, and welcome to Not Every Single. I'm Joe.
And I'm Stephanie.
So we're here on a recommendation. We talked about Rebecca Black's single Sick to My Stomach recently, and a commenter said, hey, you should check out Caroline Polachek. And it's a name I had kind of heard here and there, but I'd never heard their music.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit. Nothing really struck me personally in the past of what I've listened to.
It was like that cover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the chords. I forget the name of the song.
Right.
But so I was kind of curious, like, okay, new album. Am I going to be more into this, or is it going to be different? What's it going to be?
Yeah, I found it to be really interesting in its production. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's a lot going on here from like a million different influences. You got like acid drum and bass going on. You have like some other like 90s stuff. Like I was even hearing like the etherealness of like Moby techno. You know,
yeah.
like back like the beach soundtrack or something, you know?
Yeah.
And just obviously hyper pop seeping in as it always tends to do these days. But yeah, there's a lot to take in.
Yeah, the production is kind of stuffed. I think it does a pretty good job of not doing so much that it just sounds crazy, you know?
Yeah.
Most of the time there's a lot going on and still somehow it works. I feel like with this album, she's asking a lot of her audience. I'm not sure if this is true of Pang, so if you know, like, comment about it. But it's not this album that you can just kind of put on and be like, yeah, cool. You gotta, get the headphones on and everything.
Yeah, it is kind of a challenge, because one thing I noticed when I was done with the album and we're getting ready to shoot this video is that I couldn't really recall any particular song or hook. Like, it's not that kind of record where you hear it once and like all those choruses like stay with you and you're like, oh yeah, that one and that one. Like, I need to take it in a couple of times as my initial reaction. Not a bad thing. It just, like you're saying, it's a challenging record. It's asking for an attentive listen.
Right. Yeah. Very attentive. And I think that's something that's really cool, because, there's always the people out there who are like, oh, music is, such crap these days. And, it's tale as old as time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There always is.
Yeah. And it's like, even if you don't like this, like, this isn't my favorite album, this isn't, I don't know if this will be a top one for me this year, but I certainly appreciate and admire the work and the experimentation that has gone on in this. And clearly she has a very devoted fan base. I saw a lot of comments in Pop Heads, people just saying like, this is probably going to be my album of the year. It's only February, but it's going to be my album of the year.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear. There's clearly such talent going on this record, and vocally we'll have to get into,
right,
because that's quite a range.
Yeah. I was a little blown away listening to just the technicality. So I'm going to backtrack a tiny bit and just talk about the first track for a second.
Okay, cool.
Which I forget what it's called, but it has that lyric, desire I want to turn into you. And she comes in and there's like this belty, like rock.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And it's nowhere else in the album. And I was actually really bummed because I thought she super killed that.
Yeah, that's impressive. All these big runs where she does this big, like, operatic almost, or like, not yodely, but like Dolores from the Cranberries used to do with those big, and they'll come sweeping down. It's like insanely impressive.
She's very comfortable in her head voice. It takes a lot of breath support and a lot of work to be able to do exactly what you're saying, which is like she's coming out of full voice and into head voice and back down a lot, until like so flat. I mean, maybe there's some correction on it. I don't know, but she really often on this album does that little switch where she's, it's like switching muscles in your vocal cords, and you have to develop those muscles for a long time to be able to do that. So with such dexterity. So that's very impressive. It's not my favorite kind of vocals to listen to, but I can't help but be like really impressed by it.
It's definitely a vocal showcase. It's a production showcase. I would like to hear something more minimal from her next time. Just like that'd be a cool direction to go in, is to then scale it back, give us the minimal dark pop, pure heroin, when we all fall asleep kind of thing. You know, I want to hear that voice not surrounded by a barrage of like crazy, insane production.
Right.
But I'm talking about the future for this record. I think it works really well, and it's like such a confident body of work that I'll definitely have to take in a few times.
I think confident is a good way to put it. It's something like, you know, you look at things that have, some of the things that have come out, like what Beyonce did with Renaissance, where there's just like so much going on and
never stops.
Yeah, it never stops, and it keeps switching and it keeps you on your toes. And like there's something to be said for that. Like I do love minimal. I mean, maybe Pang is more minimal, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I'd love to hear her go a little more rock too, like just here and there.
That would also be a good direction to go.
Yeah.
And it's a really good sign that we're talking like this. If you take in a record from an artist and you're like, oh man, they could go here next. They could go here next. I'm interested to see what happens. Like that's a really good sign where you instantly want to hear the next thing.
Well, and to be able to be that kind of an artist where you're not pigeonholed, where like, okay, this is the kind of music she does, and this is like, she needs to just kind of like do this. There's a lot of artists that stay in one wheelhouse and they never really leave. And coming from here, it's like, she could probably do whatever she wants. Well, she could do whatever she wants, and it would sound amazing.
Clearly, she can sing anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like you're saying with that first track, with that big that moment of the big rock belt.
Yeah.
Like, I'd like to hear that too. So, Pang, that's her first record? Okay. Should we jump back and listen to that? Let us know if you want to hear our thoughts on Pang. I'm pretty curious, so I'd be into hearing that record. And what else should we listen to? Drop your recommendations below. This is so cool. This is what we wanted from this channel. We were talking about a completely different artist, and someone came in and said, hey, if you like this, sounds like you like it, check this out. And we did. That's how this should work.
Can I just throw a really random comment in here too, which is that like, if you like this album, maybe listen to the first Savage Garden album.
Oh, yeah. That's a good recommendation.
There was a song that reminded me of them. And they're this band from like the late 90s. They were kind of not taken super seriously at the time, but I had the record, and I actually see their influence popping up quite a bit.
Totally.
So if you haven't heard of Savage Garden, that first album with the black and white cover, I think it's self-titled. Give it a shot. Let us know, or if you like that record, let us know if I'm like totally out of left field, or if that makes sense to you.
See, and we're giving it back to you. It's a conversation here. I'll throw in one. Alice DJ from the 90s and her hit single "Better Off Alone." Something in the Caroline Polachek record made me think of that song in its sort of peak 90s productionness. And so that's a fun record to go check out.
All
right. That's what we got for you. This is Not Every Single. I'm Joe.
And I'm Stephanie.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.